I didn't notice it at first. It was just a thin, orange extension cord running from my cabin's side outlet, snaking through the gravel and disappearing behind the trees, harmless looking, like something left over from a backyard barbecue. But something about it, it didn't sit right with me. I crouched down one morning with my coffee in hand, following that cord with my eyes as it dipped into the shrubs like a trail of breadcrumbs. Then I saw her, Karen, standing smugly on her deck across the lot, sipping from a glass of Chardonnay at 10:30 in the morning, like she owned the mountain. She always had this air about her, like the HOA had knighted her queen of the woods. Every week, she found some new way to insert herself into my business. My paint color was out of neighborhood guidelines. My woodpile was stacked too rustic. Once she even complained about the smell of my smoker when I was making brisket for the whole road. So when I realized that cord ran straight into her garage, I knew something was up. I followed it, walked slow, calm, no sudden moves, like the cord was a fuse and I didn't want to set it off just yet. Behind the bushes, through the brush, all the way to her sidewall. And there it was, plugged into my cabin's power, feeding her freezer, her tools, her little electric garden fountain. She'd been siphoning electricity every single day. And not a word, not a thank you, not a note on my door. She just did it. Like I was the local utility company, and she'd been assigned a hookup. Like I owed her. But here's the thing. Karen didn't know I'd made a change to that outlet last fall, a quiet little adjustment, something the previous owner told me to do in case of flooding, something that redirected overflow power when the ground was too wet. A reroute, straight through the septic tank's gray water discharge. Yeah, Karen had been drawing power from a line that had been rewired specifically to avoid shorting out. During drainfield backups, she had no idea, and I had no intention of telling her yet, because after months of passive-aggressive HOA letters, this was finally getting interesting. It started the same way it always does out here, in the middle of nowhere, with way too much time and one neighbor who thinks the world spins around their porch swing. I bought this cabin as a getaway. Nothing fancy, just a little A-frame tucked between the pines, about 4 hours from the city. A place to breathe, reset, hear myself think. At first, everything felt perfect. No traffic, no office noise, just the hum of wind through trees and the occasional crackle of a fire. But then, the notes started showing up. The first was about my satellite dish. Too visible from the road, she wrote, like she was head of some mountain design committee. Then came a complaint about the unsightly firewood rack I'd built, hand-cut oak, stacked tight and neat, but apparently too rustic for her curated wilderness aesthetic. I laughed it off, until she took a picture of my truck parked, slightly off the gravel, and sent it to the HOA board. That got me a warning letter for parking on my own land. That's when I realized Karen wasn't just nosy. She was bored. And bored Karens are dangerous. She patrolled the neighborhood like a sheriff without a badge, camera phone always in hand, measuring tape in her little vest pocket, scanning for violations that might knock her property, value down 0.5%. And she hated that I didn't play along. I didn't go to the meetings, didn't plant the HOA-approved pansies, didn't invite her over for wine and gossip about how cheap Tom and Cheryl's shingles don't match code. I just minded my business. But that only made her try harder. She even once told me, with a straight face, that cabins like mine were bringing down the neighborhood. As if we lived in Beverly Hills. That's when I started to pay closer attention. To my tools, to my propane tanks, to the power usage, and eventually to that extension cord. Because something about her smug little smile every morning. It wasn't just nosy. It was calculated, and I was done playing nice. I waited until she left for one of her little ladies' brunches in town. You know the type. Bottomless mimosas, passive-aggressive compliments, someone crying in the bathroom by noon. That gave me a solid 2 hours to investigate, without her peeking through the blinds like a hawk in yoga pants. I unplugged the cord from my outlet first, just to be safe. No sparks, no hiss. But what I found at the other end? That's where it got wild. Her garage door was cracked, just enough for me to slip under. And sure enough, the cord snaked in like a lifeline, split through a cheap dollar store surge protector that was glowing red hot. She'd plugged in everything: her deep freezer, her wine fridge, a mini heater, a set of string lights, even some ridiculous rock waterfall contraption, bubbling away in the corner like she was running a spa. It wasn't just a juice theft. It was industrial-scale looting. And here's the kicker. She had her own outlets. Her own power. Paid for. Legit. So why steal mine? Because Karen didn't like paying overages during peak season. That's what I found later on, a sticky note on her fridge with her PG&E bill circled, and a handwritten note, use cabin power until Sept. She thought I'd never notice. That's when I remembered something. That side outlet on my cabin, the one she kept using, had been rerouted months ago when I did some trench work. The guy I hired said the system was old, patched together by the previous owner, with a few creative choices to deal with runoff from the septic field. He warned me not to plug in anything sensitive during wet season. Guess who never bothered to ask before hijacking the line? And wouldn't you know it? It had rained every afternoon for a week straight. The discharge valve was primed. That meant Karen's little setup wasn't just stealing my power. It was playing roulette with wastewater conductivity. Så I identified two for it, and I had a decision to make. Unplug her and confront her? Or let nature and plumbing take its course? I chose the latter. Because sometimes karma doesn't need help. Sometimes it just needs a little current. It happened on a Tuesday. I remember because the garbage truck had just passed through and Karen hated when anyone left their bin out. Past 10 a.m. Visual clutter, she once called it. That morning, I was sipping coffee on my porch, pretending to read a book, eyes casually locked on her house. Then it began, a flicker in her garage lights. Then a pop. Seconds later, I heard it, a high-pitched scream, followed by what I can only describe as the chaotic clattering of a dozen appliances giving up on life all at once. I stood, slowly, walked a few paces toward the tree line, and there she was, Karen, wearing fuzzy slippers, a silk robe, and the kind of look you only see on people who've realized the universe might not be on their side after all. She bolted from the garage, clutching her phone like it was a lifeline, screaming into it, "I don't know what happened. Everything's fried. My freezer's smoking. There's a smell." I nearly lost it when she yelled that last part. Because yeah, there was a smell. When you run power through a gray, water-adjacent septic line that's been soaking for days, and overload it with 6 appliances and a bubbling rock garden, things get aromatic. By the time the electrician showed up, Karen was pacing in circles, muttering about warranties and lawsuits. I stayed on my porch, waved politely when the guy passed by, and said, "Might want to check her surge path. That outlet line's not up to code anymore." His eyes narrowed. He knew exactly what I meant. A few hours later, the electrician confirmed it. The circuit she'd been stealing from was improperly grounded, soaked through, and reacting with the moisture from the old drain field. That's why her entire setup fried like an egg on a sidewalk. Karen didn't understand a word of it. She just kept screaming, "It's his fault! That's his power!" I waited for the HOA to show up. They did. But this time, they weren't there for me, Hart. A simple subscribe says more than words.